y'all doing? I'm Anthony Newman. This is Shaun Stewart. Introduction to the Injustice of Anthony Stewart. We are out here in Lexington, Virginia. We'll be taking you through the process of, the process of him where he got in his accident to where his mental ability was caused from, past the courthouse, and just give y'all another rundown of what's going on with the information on his case and everything that's going on as far as that. So I'm here with Shaun Stewart, and this is what we'll be taking you through for the day.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You ready?
Yes, sir.
All right. And we're out here at Deer Crossing Lane where Anthony Stewart's accident occurred, to where he was in his head-on collision on his moped, and we're actually out here on the location, so I will let Shaun Stewart go ahead and tell y'all about the incident.
So my brother was 14, my dad had bought him a moped, and as you see, we're here at Deer Crossing Lane outside of Rockbridge County, or in Rockbridge County. Back in the day, this sign wasn't even here. So this situation happened in 1994. At the age, my brother was 14 years old. So what happened was, my brother had a moped that my father had bought him. It had broke down, so my dad bought the moped to this small engine repair shop called Frazier's. As you see, it still exists, which is amazing. He brought him out here to get this moped fixed. The day that my brother came to get his moped, my dad brought him out here. He was hit by some people that was traveling to Lake Robinson in Michigan. They was out of Michigan. So as my brother came down this driveway right here, he entered the highway and was struck by, I don't want to say, I don't know exactly how, but I know it hit him and knocked him about 100 feet this way. So I just want you to get a good picture of, just look at this area right here. This is where he was hit on his moped. This is a very dangerous, area if you're not paying attention.
Especially with that curve, the way it's coming around, it's definitely like a blind side right there.
And if you look up this way, and you see how sharp the curve is, but this is where he was hit coming out of the driveway with his moped. At that time period, he was
So he was about what age?
He was 14 years old. So.
And the whole reason of him being here was to pick up a moped that had just got fixed by Mr. Frazier.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So when he got hit, he was rushed to Stonewall Jackson Hospital, which is in the city limits of Lexington. And then from there, they couldn't really, they didn't have, the right, stuff to help him. They sent him to Roanoke Memorial. He stayed in Roanoke Memorial, I'll probably say maybe about a day.
So how was he transported? Was it ambulance, helicopter?
Well, ambulance from here, but then helicopter from there, from Lexington, Stonewall Jackson. Then when he was sent to Roanoke Memorial, he stayed there, I want to say maybe a day. I could be wrong, it's been so long. But he was sent from there to UVA Hospital, and that's where he stayed for basically about a year, close to a year. He had to learn how to walk, talk. Once he got out of the UVA hospital, they sent him to the Kluge House, which is a rehabilitative center for kids in Charlottesville, Virginia.
So in UVA, as I want to think back, was it the front part of, I want to say, like his brain that they did the surgery on, like the front or the back side?
The main damage of his brain was to the frontal lobe, which was the what they would say now is the thinking part of the brain, the part of the brain where you formulate thought. You know what I'm saying? Where you make decisions. So I would say that the injury, and it not only just mentally but physically as well. It messed up his legs, his arms, which he already had a condition with one of his arms, coming out at birth. But just that injury was very detrimental to his life going forward.
Right. Okay. So when he actually was coming out of the driveway, was the car was coming from this direction?
I believe the car was coming from that direction, if I'm not mistaken. When he came out of the driveway, he got hit by the car coming, because it was like a blind spot. Yeah. So when they came around the corner, he got hit right here as he was pulling out. The car coming around this corner, he actually got hit by a truck. As I said, the people that hit him were coming from Lake Robinson, and they was traveling back home. They were from Michigan. you know. And he went to court for that, never won no money, none of that. So, you know.
Seemed like they might have had to been going at a good speed too to not see from there to the driveway actually him pulling out and them coming around. They had to be going at a good speed.
Right,
so,
because if he was coming from his angle and out, there's no way that they couldn't have stopped.
That's what I'm saying.
It's such a long distance.
It's a distance. That's what I said. They had to be.
This is the short end. This is the blind spot area. So if they're coming around here doing a very high speed, it's hard to see.
Yeah.
As you see when the vehicles come around the corner, look.
Yeah.
No, that's a blind spot until you get right up on it.
Yeah.
You know,
that's exactly what I was saying.
If he was coming out right here, there's no way they couldn't have stopped. They would have seen him and said, oh.
Right.
They
the direction that he went was coming back this direction, or they knocked him that direction.
Right. When they hit him and knocked him that direction.
About 100 yards.
About 100 yards that direction. Knocked his shoes off, everything.
Yeah.
And from that point, because as I said before any of his injuries, he already had, you know, the disabilities. He was already, he already had, low IQ. You know, he already was dealing with, anything predates the legal stuff. You know, before he started getting in trouble or catching drug charges, he already was in special ed educational classes.
Right.
As I said before, even after that, all his paperwork clearly shows, traumatic brain injury, learning disabilities, all the things. And then I believe from that accident and him being in an induced coma for a while, I believe that was the thing that kind of later on in life contributed to his kidney disease.
Yeah,
because he don't have diabetes.
Actually caught up with
injuries
from this situation.
From his situation.
Yeah.
Injuries from this situation caught up at the end.
Which can always catch up with you.
Right.
Definitely.
So later on down the road, I believe this is his kidney disease or his end-stage renal disease is an indirect mishap from the accident.
So was this actually since you was saying that, was this only brain injury here, or was it internal as well from, because the impact of actually getting hit in 100 feet, I'm sure eternally that's damaged something.
Yeah, the damage, I would say, yeah. So from you think about you getting hit by a truck and it knocking you 100 yards up this way.
Right.
I'm pretty sure it's going
something internally.
Some internal damage over time. You might not have caught it then, but
of course,
over time the effects, they still linger.
Of course.
And another thing about that situation too, just to bring to mind, when my brother had the accident, I wanted people to understand. As a kid, he had multiple head injuries. Just the thing is being a kid, a ruffian for the most part. We playing, the way we grew up, we was outside
knocking down football.
We football.
I remember Raro, we were playing football.
Riding dirt bikes and he had a couple of head injuries way before this as a kid, playing rough in the house. So, as I said, all of this is it predates any of the legal issues, but I wanted to bring you to this area just to give you a clear understanding of how detrimental this accident was to his overall situation.
Yeah,
to the rest of his life. To his current state, what I'm saying?
Exactly, his current state, exactly.
But as I said before, this sound wasn't even here back in the day. So I want you to, this shop has been here, my brother's accident was in '94. We're basically almost 30 years.
Yeah, and I just heard Mr. Fraser when you walked up on him and asked him if he remembered you, and he said he actually remembered the situation, and he called out, this was in the early 90s, so he definitely, 80s, so he's still here, he still remembers the situation in the day, so it's definitely, it's real, man, it's real.
Yeah.
Everything is real that he's giving you. So, we just,
it's a very dangerous road.
Dangerous now, what I'm saying? Trucks coming through speed.
And the whole city knew of this accident. So what I can know, this was an article that was in the News Gazette, which is a Lexington newspaper. And I don't know any other papers existed. As I said, I was very young myself at the time. I was no more than 16. I'm 46 now, so just to give you a clear understanding, we're standing in front of the place where, a lot of his stuff, I believe the very serious issues concerning his current state started right here.
Started right here,
yeah.
It's very understandable because, like I say, just, having it explained to you to where you can understand that, you can see coming around this corner, getting knocked 100 yards that way, y'all obviously can see that some type of internal damage and brain damage will happen if you're hit on a moped, because there's no guarantee how fast they were coming around this turn, and actually it had to be at a high speed because you should be able to see someone pulling in front of you or out on a moped. So and y'all can see, like, yeah, this is a very dangerous spot, and I definitely can see how everything starts right here.
And that's why we, you know, to this day, we know in the courts have full knowledge of all of these, you know, the traumatic brain injury, the end-stage renal disease, the low IQ, the neurocognitive damage from the accident. So you having full knowledge of this, and as we said before, you cannot reverse damaged brain tissue. It's something that you can just fix overnight. Once you succumb to some injury like that, you live with that for the rest of your life.
For the rest of your life, exactly. Like I say, me and my wife, we raised a son with disabilities, and it's in the brain, and it
cannot be fixed.
Nah, it's no fixing.
Right.
It's no
he
fixing.
Is who he is.
Yes, yes.
So, you know, even though, as I said, for the average person that might look at my brother, just because he can carry some sort of a conversation, it goes deeper than just his mindset, because
way deeper.
He can record anything that you say to him, he can record it. But when you ask him to give you a definition or to give you an understanding of what you're saying, he cannot comprehend. Right. He's basically, when it comes to that part of his brain, I said it's very strange how his brain works. He could say numbers forward and backward like a ace. When you give him the definition of a situation, or him interacting with people, or, you know, trying to break down a situation, his brain just don't formulate the way ours do, you know, to see, oh man, this is what it is. So, you know. Yeah. But just to give you a clear understanding, this is where it started. As I said, we're out here in Rockbridge County, Deer Crossing Lane, at Mr. Frazier's small engine repair shop. And as I said, back when we were kids, this sign didn't even exist. This a lot of these signs were put up, I'm pretty sure, years after, you know. Oh, so, yeah. Like, I went past the old middle school up there. They done changed that so much. Changed the whole thing. Wow. Yeah, so a whole lot of things changed. You gotta think, as I said, this is almost 30 years ago. So a whole lot of things have changed in that time period. But just to give y'all insight of how it all started, man, like you said, we're Rockbridge County, Deer Crossing Lane, on scene where the accident started to really, like he says, to the situations that he's going through now, man. It all started right here, so y'all seeing it firsthand. We are on location in Lexington, Virginia, Rockbridge County, at Miss Ann's house. Y'all know about Miss Ann. Miss Ann is legendary. But we are where Anthony Stewart, this is where he grew up at, and this is where his life was spent at, and this is where his childhood was spent at. So I'll let his brother take over and explain to you a little bit about how they both grew up in Lexington, Virginia. So this is the street that we grew up on. My mother still lives right here at 407 Carruthers Street, as you see. As a kid, this was a very notorious street, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. The reason I say that because all of the kids hung out on the street, you know. Right here. The neighborhood was very, you know, very different when I was growing up compared to what it is now. But, you know, not even far from here, which we're gonna go video, you know, in a minute. One of Tony's charges with this current case that he's serving the 21-year 6-month sentence on occurred right down the block from here with a childhood friend that we grew up with at the time by the name of Chris Hobson. So just to give you some history, you know, my father bought this house back in the late 80s, early 90s, you know, my father worked at Villemile for about 25, 30 years. Which VMI is not far from here. Which I'm gonna have to take you through and get a couple shots, man. VMI is actually the Virginia Military Institute, you know, so it's like you say, it's right here, smack right in the middle of everything. Everything. So it's a very historical school. One reason because at one time John C. Marshall lived on Villemile Hill. So, you know, just to get an understanding. But we grew up right here. You know, as kids, we did the normal thing. You know, we had dirt bikes, skateboards. You know, we hung out. You know, later on in life, which as I always like to say, when the crack epidemic hit, they would never talk about that. You know, they're very quick to talk about, you know, the meth epidemic that's going on now. But when the crack epidemic hit, this was a very notorious block right here in Lexington, Virginia, because if you came to town, everybody knew what 407 Carruthers was. Everybody knew Carruthers Street. And I don't want to say that, you know, this was a drug block. we was all involved in things, but my father and my mother worked for, you know, what they had. As you say, you know, as you see, my mother still lives in this house today. You know, my father passed a few years back. But just to give you an understanding, this is the street we grew up on, which is not far from Liber and Downey Middle School. As I said, you got Virginia Military Institute, which is Vilma down the street. And then
Washington and Lee College.
Washington Lee Law School. And I want to talk a little bit about Washington Lee. You know, as the day go on, I'm going to bring you to the understanding of Washington Lee. I had an aunt. And we're going to go back to the Lee Chapel where Robert E. Lee is buried. And I will always tell people, you know, for all the people that live down south and are very loving of the Confederacy, this is sort of, Lexington, Virginia is like the shrine to the Confederacy.
Of course. Yeah.
You know, this is where, you know, Robert E. Lee, Stonewall Jackson, they're very revered here, which I mean, that's people's personal things, but we'll get into that later on. But just to bring you back to it, yeah, this is where my brother grew up at. As I said, my brother went to Waddell as a child, and then in middle school he went to Liber and Downey, which is right up the street, a very historical school. As you know, Lexington is a very historical town. You know what I'm saying? But when I grew up, it was very different. It was a store down the street right here called Mr. Sam's. One of the only black stores, and right behind you, if you turn the camera, Mr. Sam lived in this house right behind us. His kids, you know, people in the neighborhood know Mr. Sam, him and his Mr. Sam Seafer and his wife. If we needed anything, Mr. Sam was always on call. He was sort of like a doctor in the neighborhood, you know. For people that didn't have a lot of money, if you needed sugar, bread, whatever, you could go to Mr. Sam's. Kool-Aid, everything was right here down the street at the end of Carruthers Street on Diamond, you know. So we call this Diamond Hill, the black area right here. So when I was growing up, it was two black neighborhoods. It was Diamond Hill and Mudtown, which we might get a shot of. But Diamond Hill was like the center of attention because it was like the black Mecca growing up. This was the black neighborhood right here. This is where everybody was at. This is where, you know, most people that, you know, hard working blue collar community were black people. This was, you know, everybody when I was growing up that was black owned houses here in this neighborhood. As I said, my mother is like probably one of the last staples in the neighborhood because she still owns her house. You know, we have other black people on the street. But since then, a lot of the property's been bought up by Vilma, Washington Lee. So, you know, things changed over time, you know, and it's definitely been gentrified. I'm just gonna be real with you. It's definitely been gentrified. But as I said, me and my brother grew up on the street. We played with all of the, you know, the neighboring kids.
Definitely spent a lot of my time when I was out here on this street here.
So, you know, we had parties here as kids. My brother used to throw parties in the basement, which is strange to say now. It's so small, you know how they got in there. But,
right.
You know, this is what we did, and this is just the neighborhood. So, you know, we're gonna take you a little bit around, but what we're gonna talk about next is we're gonna talk about the case with Chris Hobson. One of the charges that was brought, as I said, my brother had got caught. My brother's serving a 21-year sentence on 3 traffic stops. And these 3 traffic stops occurred in a week's time, or a 6-day period of 2020, all in the month of October. October 6th, October 7th, October 13th. And I'm gonna get into those 2 of those cases. You know, one of them is, I'm not gonna say it's not relevant, but I'm gonna get into the, you know, the politics of those cases and how they happened and how he was charged, which is very bizarre to me. You know what I'm saying?
I mean, everything just seems bizarre. Like I said, I've been going through this since we've been filming, since we've been, you know, documenting everything, since you've been showing us everything that's going on with the paperwork and everything. It's still mind-boggling.
Mind-boggling, right?
It's unbelievable.
Right, and then another thing about the case, which is which is very strange to me, is how while he was sitting in jail and he beat 14 charges, he gets convicted on 3 lesser charges. You got to keep that in mind. So he's sitting in jail in the month of October. He goes to court and beats 14 charges. They're all dismissed on the grounds that he's incompetent and unrestorable and for the foreseeable future.
I mean, it seems like they're just trying to say they had to do something, trying to charge him with something.
So that's what
he beat all the big charges, so we're just gonna charge you with something.
Right, so they took 3, lesser offenses and convicted him and gave him 21 years, 6 months. I want you to think about that as we go through this documentary, though. It's very mind-boggling, as he said. But yeah, my mother still lives here. This is the house we grew up at. If you talk to most of the people in the town, They would say at one time this was a very infamous street, you know?
Yeah, of course.
But this whole area,
yeah.
let's just get the whole town has always been infamous.
Yeah.
From the poor to the rich, it's just a very mysterious town. I want you to get understand.
Every place has its spots. This was the spot, you know what I'm saying? Like this was a known spot.
Right. So as I said before, we grew up different. And for most people, think just because it's a small town, it didn't have, you know, it wasn't no murders like that, but it did have its crime. As most young people, when we grew up, it was an era where everybody hung on corners. You know, everybody hung on corners, or we even hung at the park. You know, it wasn't too many options. There wasn't a lot of options for us growing up. It wasn't nothing really to do here outside of, you know, hang at a friend's house, or, you know, hang on the corner late at night, you know, or go to the school.
Mr. Stewart them used to have the band.
Yeah.
We used to be at the park, they'd be playing over there. Like, I remember all that.
Uncle Leonard was in the band, him and his son, Leonard Jr., they had a band, a very good band, and they would have pig roasts, you know, every you know, summer or, you know, spring. And a lot of people, they would invite the neighborhood, and, you know, they would feed a lot of people, and we just have a good time. So, you know, it's kind of old school out here. It had a lot of old school traditions. Even though it was a small town, it was very, it had a very old school feel. You had a lot of old school hustlers, a lot of old school gamblers.
Tight-knit community.
It was a tight-knit community at one time.
Yes,
so,
sir.
you know, before drugs destroyed it. And I'm not just saying it for the black community. I know white people are dealing with the same thing now with the meth situation, which is sad. But it was a very tight-knit community when I was growing up.
Like you said, I just want to say, like, in general, man, that's just pretty much the basics, what you get everywhere you're at. And nowhere is no different. You were saying up there, you were saying about a case that he had caught with Chris Hobson. You want to explain a little bit about that, since we're in the location?
So during the court proceedings, as I said, my brother 3 traffic stops. One of my brother's cases happened right here on Diamond Street. I don't want to say the exact locality, but it's in the paperwork, you know, in the transcripts, in the court record. And it happened right here on Diamond Street. So as you do, it was right down the street from my mom's house, which we just was in front of, where we grew up at. But the case with Chris Hobson, in the case, he said that he saw my brother standing on the block, you know, not far from my mother's house, and he was on his way to Roanoke, and he said that he saw my brother standing on Diamond Street, and he picked him up. And he said that when he picked him up, you know, basically, you know, my brother was like, you know, what you doing? You know, he's like, he wanted to ride, so he called it, you know, he just tagged along, or it was a joy ride. You know, that's what Chris say in the court record.
Just picked him up to go along, ride
with
have somebody to talk to.
Right, so at that time, I say that Chris had full knowledge, because I believe Chris worked for the drug task force. I'm just gonna keep it real on. Chris was working for them, because it just was odd that you just come and he was standing out of the blue, you pick him up, and then the police is following you. So in the record, the police knows that Chris has no license. I want you to get an understanding of this, how crazy this case is. So Chris picks my brother up on Diamond Street, which is not far from my mother's house, as you see. And he said that my brother wanted to tag along, or that he just went for the joy ride. Chris picks him up. Chris has no license. The police followed them from here in Lexington to Roanoke, which is about an hour drive.
I'm about to say a good 45 minutes.
Good 45-minute drive.
Good 45 minutes.
45-minute drive. So he follows them to Roanoke. Now they know Chris has no license. Now I want you to get understanding. Chris takes my brother.
Now no pullover from here.
No pullover to Roanoke. They know he has no license. I want you to keep that in mind. Chris takes him to Roanoke. He takes him to his aunt's house, where he gets the drugs. Now keep that in mind. So they charging my brother with something that somebody took him to do. Now we know his mental state, we know his condition. Chris picks him up, takes him to Roanoke. Chris takes him to his aunt's house where the drugs is purchased. Keep that in mind. Then,
did anything happen to the aunt?
Nothing happened to the aunt. Nobody ever was charged. Roanoke was never notified about this situation. But that's called a form of conspiracy. So if you're not charging Chris, who actually took him to the place, who picked them up and got them the drugs, what would you call that? That's I don't know what you want to call that, aiding and abetting.
But no, that's
a form that he never was charged with this, but they used him as a state's witness to get a conviction on my brother. I want you to keep this in mind.
Yeah.
The police that's in the documentary, the police that's on the stand, Philip Flint is one of the drug task force members, said that they knew Chris had no license, and that they followed him around Roanoke, and then when they get back down the highway, they pull Chris over, and they found on my brother an 8-ball of coke. Now he had the coke. I'm not going to dispute that he didn't have no drugs on him. He got caught with an 8-ball of coke. 8-ball of coke do not call for a 21-year sentence. Now this is just one of 3 traffic stops, as I'm telling you. This is just one. But what we're saying is the police had full knowledge that Chris had no license. They followed him from Lexington to Roanoke. They was in Roanoke all day. This was like over an 8-hour period. They followed him around while they running that, and Chris clearly states that my brother was getting high with his aunt's fiance, and that he purchased the drugs from his aunt's fiance. I want you to get an understanding of this bizarre case, this bizarre case, and the drug task force has full knowledge of this. So when they follow him back, they get to Rockbridge County, and they pulled him over right outside Rockbridge County. I want to say the first exit. I don't know the exact. I don't know what exit that is. But coming back down there, when they pull him over, it's a platoon of police officers. So when my brother went to court, they had at least 16 police officers outside of the informants or the state's witnesses testify against my brother at the case for an 8-ball of coke. That's just one of the cases, an 8-ball of coke. Now, all of these officers didn't testify just for this case, but the majority of them came from this one traffic stop with Chris.
Right.
And in the courtroom, they clearly stated that he had no license. I'm wondering if Roanoke knew that they had somebody in their city, which I heard that you can actually, there's nothing where a cop can surveillance you in different cities. And they couldn't pull him over because then Roanoke would have been involved, which I understand.
Of course, yeah.
But how do you as a police officer, especially a drug task force, which I believe they would be, a different, those would be highly respected officers because they're doing drug stings or whatever. How would you follow this man to Roanoke knowing he has no license? He could have killed somebody going up 81. He could have killed somebody while riding around, the time period in Roanoke. Because I said this was like an 8-hour trip. And then he could have killed somebody because they allowed him to drive all the way back down 81, And they did none of this, nothing happened. Chris was never charged more than he had no license, but nothing was talked about, I feel like that was one case that should have been dismissed from the rip, that y'all had knowledge that he had no license. So how do you allow somebody to break laws to get somebody?
Right.
You got to look at that, situation. Mm-hmm. How are you allowing somebody to break the laws to get a conviction?
Which they do all the time.
And which that was just plain entrapment, because you knew that he was working for you. Because there's no way that you're just following him around. Because in a part of the court proceedings, as I said, I have all the sound bites, I have all of the paperwork. Officer Flint said he jumped ahead of the caravan that was surveillancing Chris, Hobson, and Anthony Stewart, which is my brother. How would you jump ahead if you didn't know where they were going, unless the person that was with my brother, because he had no knowledge of this, was working for you, and he was texting you while y'all was riding around Roanoke, and they was getting high, and he was telling you where they are going, in real time. Oh, we're going here. He's texting them. My brother's incompetent. He's not paying attention. And how many of us, when we deal with somebody that we believe a friend,
they're texting about, that's what they're doing.
Damn, he's texting somebody, but he lining me up.
Right.
He lining me up.
Right.
So we in real time, this is what's going on. Chris is working with the police. I believe it's clearly in the documentation of what's going on. And Chris is a part of, he's one of the informants. I truly believe if you pull his phone records, or the officers that's involved in that case, mainly probably Philip Flint, his phone records, it will show and prove that Chris was an informant, that they was entrapping a person that they know not only had a drug habit, but Chris clearly states that even when they get pulled over on 81, mind you, they go up to Roanoke, on their way back to, when they get pulled over outside of Lexington on 81, Chris says in the court on court record that he was still getting high in the cabin of his truck.
Process of coming back home.
Even he said he got high the whole time. So the whole time he was with Chris, he was getting high, but Chris didn't get high. But I know Chris get high because they hung together. Yeah. But Chris didn't get high. But you just take somebody with you for a joyride. But yet you the person who took him to get the drugs, and you rode him around with the drugs, and you picked him up from Lexington. So why wasn't he charged? You don't look at that case as being very strange. You know, you have to look at it, you know, for what it really is.
Definitely something to look at.
So, you know, that's just one of his traffic stops. As I said, three traffic stops. And that traffic stop was the last traffic stop, which occurred on October 13th of 2020. So my brother, you know, after catching his charges,
two others, the 6th and the 7th.
6th and the 7th.
Right.
So we're gonna go to another area where Sarah Ruley, who was one of the police informants that was involved in my brother's case, we're gonna go to where she was pulled over. My brother was not in the car. The drugs was found on her, the marijuana, the pipe, and she had other stuff in her car. I don't know everything, but I know she got caught with a smoking device, is what they say, marijuana, and an 8-ball of meth. My brother was nowhere in the car, but he got charged with that. Nowhere in the vehicle, but he was charged.
Just because she said
just
so?
Off word of mouth. But this woman was on probation, you know, for breaking and entering. You know, as I said before, we don't know the details, but we know that she was on probation and that she was already in trouble for her own charges when she set Anthony up.
Right. So then being caught with all of that, them new charges. So let me get them dropped and let me say I got it from him.
But as I said before, how that makes her reliable, because once we get down to that area and shoot the video about Sarah Ruley and the case that involves her, when they caught her with the drugs, they never came back to the source where she said she got the drugs. So when they caught Sarah with the drugs, they never came back to my mom's house and conducted a search to find the drugs. You just went off our word of mouth, but this girl is already in trouble for breaking and entering. I don't know if it was day and night.
Known criminal, really.
Yeah, so you're a known criminal. So how are you a reliable informant? You gotta keep all of this in mind as we go through the day and we do this documentary and talk about, you know, the modern day lynching of Anthony Stewart. Let's just get that right. You know, as he said, it's definitely an injustice, but this documentary is a modern day lynching of a man who has a history over 21 years of being incompetent with mental disease and traumatic brain injury.
Yes.
You know, simple and plain.
Yes.
So this is as I said, this is the case.
So we're here on Diamond Street.
And as you said, we're on Diamond Street, which is right up the street from the Historical Military Institute of Villemar, Virginia Military Institute. Here go to school, walking distance. You could throw a rock and hit the building. It's right here.
Yes, sir. Yes,
you know, and my mom lived right here. My dad worked at Villemar for over 25 years. Worked at Villemar for over 25 years. So, you know, as you go through the day, we're not only giving you the history of this town, as I said before, there's a lot of people that are married at these two historical schools, Villemar and Washington Lee. And the two greatest heroes is, this town is a shrine to the Confederacy, which is Robert E. Lee and Stonewall Jackson.
Yeah.
They dwelled right here. And as I said, we're gonna go to the chapel and do some of the video, and where actually Robert E. Lee is buried today. He's buried there. Him and his horse is buried at the Lee Chapel. Yeah. You know. So we're gonna do, you know, we're gonna take you around Lexington, and we're gonna give you some history, and, you know, just talk about, you know, the geographical area that we're in, and all of the madness that goes on here.
So with that being said, we will move to the next location. We downtown historical Lexington, Virginia, Rockbridge County. We're just gonna give y'all a little history behind the county and Lexington itself.
So right now we on Main Street. This is the heart of Lexington, Virginia. If you look around, you'll see some very historical places. You have the Southern Inn restaurant right here. You have Grand Home Furnishings, which just recently closed. And if you look around, if he pans the camera, you'll see certain things. Actually, they made the movie, some of the movies, Summersby in Lexington.
I remember
Summersby in Lexington, Virginia. And right behind us is the old circuit courthouse, you know. So, you know, just to give you a little bit of history about it, this courthouse has been here for quite a long time. I don't know how, you know, the actual history of the building, but it's a very old courthouse. I would say in the late, you know, early 2000s, they built the new courthouse, which we'll do a little bit of history on and talk about my brother's case. But this is the courthouse right here. As I said, if you look, Lexington still has this, you know, it's very historical look. You know, very historical look. You know, a bunch of shops, a bunch of restaurants. You know, a lot of things. Banks. You know, little arts and craft stores, coffee shops. So you know, it's been kept in very good condition, very pristine, Rockbridge County. But when I was growing up, this was the circuit courthouse. You know, just to give a little history, I've done my fair bit of suffering from that courthouse. I'll keep it real with you, be on camera. I did not like coming to this building as a youngster. I have PTSD coming to it as a grown man. But
I want to say the Stonewall's house where Stonewall Jackson actually lived, was it on this street or the next street up?
Actually, the Stonewall Jackson house was right around the corner, which is on Washington. So if he steps up and just pans the camera to the stoplight, you go to this corner and take a right.
Take a right, yeah, it's right back there.
House. And I believe that's still there. I believe it's still a museum right there. You know, I don't live in Lexington. I don't know everything about Lexington, but I grew up out here, so I have quite a good knowledge of Rockbridge County and Lexington, Virginia. But yeah, this is a very historical place. One thing I will give Lexington, it's a good place to raise your kids, and as a older person, it's a good place to retire.
Definitely.
No very violent crime. It's never been violent crime here. I give it. I mean, don't get me wrong. Every place has its murders, but Lexington, for the most part, I would salute the police on, you know, keeping the violent crime out of the community.
I know,
that's one thing I would say.
I know when I was out here, we were in between Lexington and Buena Vista, which is more or less, I say, the country part, man. And it was great, though, man. Like I said, it's definitely a place to raise your kids, and very southern, yeah.
Yeah, very southern. Very southern. You definitely get southern hospitality. As I said, they got good food. It's a lot of restaurants in Lexington. I don't want to make this because of my brother's situation that it's a bad place. Yeah. I definitely don't want to get that. It's a very good place to raise your kids while they're young, you know, before they get out in the world. It's a very good place to learn values, you know what I'm saying? As far as I said, you get the southern hospitality. You know, you're not gonna meet too many people here that will shun you or, you know, be disrespectful, you know. Everybody speaks here, you know, that you're greeted with hospitality when you come to the town. So, you know, I want to keep that in mind. I don't want to get that confused with my brother's case. I believe my brother's case is just something of a vendetta with the former Commonwealth Attorney, Mary Lester, because she felt that my brother was competent, but he really wasn't competent. You know what I'm saying? I believe that her case became very vindictive, you know what I'm saying, throughout the course of his situation over a period of years. And you know, you gotta think of the time that we live in.
Thank you.
So I want you to understand it too. You gotta think, we just left the month of mental health. We was dealing with last month was a mental health awareness month, you know what I'm saying? And I want to get you an understanding of that with the mental health thing. There's situations in life that occur where time has to catch up to situations, you know what I'm saying? In my brother's situation, I believe that when a lot of this was going on with my brother's case and his situation, I believe that over time it evolved to where mental health awareness is something that's spoke about greatly, because there's a lot of people that's caught up in the judicial system that suffers from mental elements or mental disease, or you know, and I believe in my brother's case, I'm not gonna say everybody, because over time, even with myself, when my brother was catching charges, you know, we never looked at him like he wasn't until I got the actual evaluations that were done by Scott Bender, you know, concerning my brother and the things that he was dealing with. And then I looked at the history over 21 years of his case, you know, cases with you know, his drug charges or whatever, and looking at the evaluations that were done on him, it gave me it educated me on that, man, this man is really he's really dealing with some issues. You know, don't get me wrong, when I was growing up and this happened, me and my brother are 2 years apart. You know, we both Pisces. We both I'm born on February 24th of 1977. My brother was born on March 9th of 1979. We're 2 years apart. We hung together every day. So I knew my brother before the accident, and I knew the changes of my brother after the accident.
Oh yeah.
So when I seen the things that was going on with him, I knew straight, you know, right then, you know, this is from the accident. Mm-hmm. But I never knew to the extent how bad he was until I got involved in his case and started looking at the evaluations and all of the medical documentation that had been kept over the years. As I said, a 21-year period.
I mean, of course, you know, you like you say, you grew up with him, so you seeing him. But as far as the understanding,
right.
I don't really think it would come until you're almost at an adult stage, right. Or, you know, actually see what's going on. That'll
right.
give you that.
And then
understanding.
you gotta think, as we get older, you know, even though we have, you know, brothers and sisters, you have siblings, you know, not that we pay attention, but we get caught up in our own lives. Mm-hmm. You know, we get separated when we get older because we all take on our own journey in life.
Yeah.
And with my brother, you know, even when I wasn't incarcerated, we were on the street. You know, he kind of did his own thing. I kind of did my own thing. You know, we was always around each other, but it's a lot of things that we didn't do as we got older.
Right.
But when you know, when I got the chance to look at all the documentation that was accumulated over a 21-year period with his case, it was mind-blowing to see that how do you allow somebody to be in this condition. And when I say this, I'm talking about the courts, even this courthouse behind us, because some of his trouble started here, and y'all knew he had these elements, you know, traumatic brain injury, these conditions, and you never intervened being a public servant and helped him. That's my situation, because you know, a good 30 minutes from here, you have the Woodrow Wilson Rehabilitative Center, and he never was sent there.
Right.
And now I want you to get an understanding as well why my brother was dealing with these elements. Not only did he not get help, you know, when he did finally get to the Woodrow Wilson Rehabilitative Center, you know, he was reincarcerated and never got that opportunity again. But also while he was dealing with that situation, there was really nothing in this county that could help him. You know, it was nothing, you know, situated in this city or this area that could help him with his disabilities, you know what I'm saying? So his case, you know, was kind of like, you know, overlooked. And then when we finally, you know, God bless the soul of Mr. Kenneth Robinson, who was the actual attorney from Rockville, Maryland, who actually took on my brother's case back in 2014, that actually proved that he was incompetent. That was where it really started.
Yeah.
If you go back and look at the evaluations, my brother had been incompetent for a very long time. You know what I'm saying? They knew of it, but the courts was kind of like, you know, as I said, I believe they were just brushing it off because they really didn't see that at that time period. But when Mr. Ken Robinson in 2015, 2016 took over his case, and
made it known,
and then start getting them evaluated, it came to the conclusion, man, this man's incompetent. Man, that was just like mind blowing, because even me at the time, like, man, you'll never, you know, because that's such a hard thing to prove in a court of law.
Yeah, but incompetent is serious. That's
serious.
Why it's a known fact of the word that
what I'm saying,
incompetent means something.
Yep. So, you know, that's basically, if you want to get to the, you know, the bottom of that, but that's just the courthouse. You know, we're on Main Street, and as we go through the day, we'll talk a little bit more about, you know, other things involved in my brother's case. But, you know, just to get to the point, we're on Main Street in historical Lexington, which is situated in Rockbridge County.
So we out here at another location. Let's get into I guess the little part where you was talking about I think it was the October 6th stop of
yes, sir.
With Sarah Ruley.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, let's go ahead and explain to the people about that situation.
So as you can see, this is a very rural area of the county. When we were growing up, this is actually Furs on Fur Mill Road. But when we were growing up as kids, we called this the rope swing. So on October 6th, they follow my brother Anthony and a friend of his at the time, Sarah Ruley, from Lexington to Roanoke. They were surveillancing them. And that day that they went, you know, on October 6th, it was actually her daughter's birthday. And when they went to Roanoke, they were going to get some gifts. And, you know, she said that she took my brother to a so-called drug house, which that was never proven. But they go to Roanoke, the police surveil them, you know, all day. They follow them around Roanoke, whatever. They actually say at the trial that, you know, they follow them to Valley View Mall, which is probably the most popular mall in Roanoke, Virginia. And then when they left that mall, or before they went to the mall, they actually followed them to Northwest Roanoke, which is a black area of the city, one of the black areas of the city. But it does have a lot of drug, you know, activity in that area. But nevertheless, little they know, a lot of my family lives in Roanoke. That's my mother's from Buchanan, Virginia. You know what I'm saying? So on my mother's side of the family, 99% of my family lives in Roanoke. You know what I'm saying? So as I said before, they never proved that he went to a drug house. They never went back to the place where supposedly the drugs was bought to do a raid to say, okay, drugs was sold out of this house. And never contacted Roanoke about the situation. So what had transpired was they do the surveillance on them. They do the surveillance on them on October 6th, follow them to Roanoke. On their way back, she drops my brother Anthony off the house. She goes in the house. She says at the court proceeding that it was her daughter's birthday and that my brother had took her to the mall to buy some gifts for her daughter. You know, he was helping her because she didn't have no money at the time. So my brother assisted her and helping her get gifts for her daughter's birthday, which she had to attend that day or that evening, a birthday party. So they was in Roanoke for a good, you know, good part of the day, you know, earlier part of the day. They drove back to Lexington. And when they went to Lexington, they went into my mother's house, which is on Carruthers Street that we recorded earlier. And they actually wrapped some gifts for her daughter, or she wrapped gifts for her daughter.
Right.
She says this, you know. And then when she left, it was probably like, you know, late evening when she leaves. Now you gotta think October, it gets dark early, you know. So let's say she probably leaves the house, you know, they've been surveillancing them, you know, from Roanoke, you know, earlier part of the day, all day they've been surveillancing them, the Rockbridge, or, you know, the Rockbridge by the Top Drug Task Force. They follow her when she leaves the house. My brother's not in the car with her, Anthony's not in the car. They follow her on the outskirts of Rockbridge and they pull her over on this road. I don't know the exact part of this road, but this road extends for miles.
And as you can see, it ain't a light in sight that where if it was dark outside, that it would be light on the street or anything.
Other than the police.
Completely dark out here.
So other than police, you know, the police lights, that's all it would be out here. So just imagine a female by herself, single white female by herself, on this road in October, pulled over by a platoon of police officers. I want you to think about that, because as he said, there's no street lights at all. At nighttime on this road, it is pitch black. You couldn't probably see the front of your face without a car.
I wouldn't even want to be walking on it.
Right, so she gets pulled over on this road. Sarah Ruley gets pulled over on this road. As you see, as I said before, I don't know what exact point, but this road extends for miles. She's pulled over on this road. They search her. They found on her a smoking device, as they would say it, the drug task force, a small amount of marijuana, and an 8-ball of meth, or methamphetamine. And a small amount of meth on her. So when she stops, the police, you know, they interrogate her, they pull out the car. All of these police officers, think about this. I would say that the drug task force consists of, I don't know, 10 minimum, maybe 15 police officers. You know, whatever the amount was, it doesn't matter. She was on a dark road.
Right here.
Right, dark road, by herself, them pressing her for information about what had happened, or, you know, where she got drugs. Now, mind you, my brother's not in the car with her. Anthony is nowhere to be found. When she says she got the drugs from him, never did the police officers go back to the residence where the drugs came from and conduct a search of my mother's house.
That's what she's saying.
That's what she's saying. Why didn't you get a search warrant and go back.
Go right back.
And search the house. Now, out of that one case evolved 2 cases. On the 6th, as I told you, October 6th, October 7th,
which was
and October 13th. The pullover. So what they do to Sarah is, who I told you was already dealing with charges of her own. Prior to these charges she just caught, the 8 ball of meth, the small amount of marijuana, and the smoking device that she got caught with, or the pipe or bowl or whatever, bubble, whatever she got caught with, she was already in trouble, on probation. So she's already doing illegal activities, just being around, you know, anybody doing anything, because she was already in trouble. So she was already on active probation. Okay, on October 6th, once they catch her, they take her to the police station, and they're trying to get information from her. Supposedly she contacts my brother Anthony. She's telling the police, or later that day, he's going back. So this situation on October 6th evolved into another traffic stop with a girl by the name of Tabitha Willis, who is a family member through my brother's wife, because that's my brother's wife's niece. So she supposedly gets a ride with Anthony, and I'm gonna break down her case, how illegal and how crazy this case is. She goes to Roanoke with Anthony later on that evening, and this case evolves from, it goes from October 6th to 7th, because it goes past midnight.
Right.
So there's surveillance in them. My brother goes back to Roanoke. They watch him go to this area of Roanoke that they call drug infested, which is always the black neighborhood that gotta be drug infested when drugs is everywhere. But they follow him to this neighborhood. He gets out the car, she sits in the car for maybe, 20 to 30 minutes. That's what she says. And she clearly says that when he comes out, he asked her, she said that the reason they went to Roanoke because he asked her to take her on the road to get marijuana. Marijuana's legal in the state of Virginia now, so it don't even matter, but that's what she says. Now, when they get, the police follow them all the way from Roanoke, one of the officers that was doing a surveillance on them about, I believe the name of, detective or special agent Spencer, he says that he follows them. He's a part of the Botetourt Drug Task Force. He says that he follows them from Roanoke to Lexington, and while he's following them or trailing them, she's, exceeding the speed limit, but he can't pull them over because he can't pull them over in Roanoke because then it messes up the case.
Yeah, that's right.
So they got to follow them all the way back to Rockbridge. Now, Tabitha is driving her father's car, which is I would say around a 98, 99 Pontiac Grand Am. You know what I'm saying? Or older Grand Am, silver car. The officer says that when he's running the tags, because he still has to find probable cause to pull them over, he's running the tags, and that the tags is coming back to a Jeep. And that the tags is coming back to a Jeep. Now, mind you, we all know that a Jeep, no matter if it's a Cherokee or a Wrangler, it's not a Grand Am. It's 2 different vehicles. One's an SUV, one is a sedan or a compact vehicle. They're following him back. He runs the tags maybe 2 or 3 times. Each time he runs the tags, the vehicle is coming back to a Jeep. So now he has probable cause to pull him over.
Yeah.
When he gets to Rockbridge, listen to this. They conduct the traffic stop. He hits his lights, and when he pulls him over, this same cop that has been following him, that's been running these tags, he runs the tags again. The tags come back legit because he had got one of the alphabets on the license plates wrong. So at that point, he had no reason to even search the car, but yet they still conducted a legal search of the car. And at the time when they searched the car, they found on Tabitha, not on Anthony, an ounce of marijuana and an ounce of cocaine. I want you to think about that logically. So they followed him. He knowing that the traffic stop is not legit, he tells you as he's coming down the highway, he's running the tags on his vehicle. He runs them 2 or 3 times, and the vehicle keeps coming back to a Jeep. But when he finally stops him and he runs the tags, come to find out, the car is legit. The car is registered, the license plates are legit. He had got one of the alphabets wrong on the license plates.
So, but you pull them over, when you find out that the car is right, but you didn't pull them over when the tags was coming back that the car is wrong.
Wrong. And the reason he didn't do that because the whole time that he was running the tags, he was out of his jurisdiction.
Right.
Because he was following them, because they had to get the traffic, to get the charge solely in Rockbridge County, they have to pull them over in Rockbridge County. So you gotta think, coming down 81, you come out of Roanoke, the city of Roanoke, these are the counties that you come through. You come out, so if they follow them all the way up the highway, they go through Roanoke, Botetourt County, Roanoke County, and then they enter the city of Roanoke, because Roanoke has its own county. So it's Roanoke City, Roanoke County, Botetourt, Rockbridge.
Right.
So think about that. On his way back, he came from Roanoke City through Roanoke County. They not having no knowledge that they're, these police, that people being surveillance in their city. And why wouldn't you tell somebody in their city, hey, this man came from Lexington, bought drugs? Don't you think you would tell them to go search that house?
Yeah.
Don't you think that the community of Roanoke would want to clean up?
Yeah.
Don't you think the community of Roanoke would want to clean up the dirt that's going on in their county?
Oh yeah. Definitely.
So nobody tells this city of all of these traffic stops or all of these undercover surveillances that's going on. So they're telling me this is legal. I'm not saying it's not. I'm not a lawyer to tell you that it's illegal, but I know there's a lot of illegal activity that's going on in these cases.
Right.
For one, if I'm with somebody, if I'm with somebody in a car, y'all surveillancing me and her, I get out the car, y'all pull over down here on this dark road with a riverbed,
ain't no
lights whatsoever.
None.
And you can hear me echoing, anything could be out here. Bobcats, whatever. Anything could be out here, and it gets cold in October. It's starting to get cold.
Yeah.
It gets dark very early. So between 5 and 5:30, it's pitch black outside. Let's just be real.
Yeah.
It's dark out here. You pull her over, and just off word of mouth, y'all take her word. A person is already in trouble. She's not reliable because she's already in trouble.
Yeah.
My brother's a felon. She's a felon. So she's already doing something because she's hanging around another felon. But she knows of his mental condition. And they get high together. I want you to think about this logically. You pull over, you take her word of mouth, but you never go conduct a search of my mother's house where he lived at on Carruthers Street in Lexington, and y'all charge him.
That's just like me saying, yeah, Shaun killed him. And they believe it.
Word of mouth.
Don't have no proof, no nothing.
No proof to prove that. And not only did they do that, but my brother is now serving a 21-year sentence, and this is part of the conviction. Now get back with the case with Tab. When they pull her over, she not knowing her rights. She's panicking because she see police. She's pulled over on the interstate. Man, y'all just told this woman y'all doing an illegal search of her vehicle. Which ain't even. Y'all didn't have the right to search them because you didn't have no probable cause. You say in the court record that you followed them to Roanoke, back from Roanoke, while you was running the tags, coming back down 81, going north to Lexington.
To me, they should have, if they was doing all of that, when they ran the tags and the tags came back wrong, but like you said, they was in a different jurisdiction, so he couldn't pull them over.
Right, but even once you pull them over,
that's when you should have pulled them over. Why would you continue
to, so even once you pull them over, why would you continue to search her car when you know, man, her car legit? Yeah. You had no grounds.
Yeah, right.
So then that destroys your case.
Everything.
This is what Chris Russell's hearing. This is what the judge is hearing. This is what the Commonwealth and Chris Russell, former Commonwealth attorney Mary Lester, and the current judge that sits on the bench right now, Chris Russell, heard and allowed this in his courtroom in front of an all-white jury. And then this man, which is my brother, ends up getting 21 years, 6 months in prison, when he's already dealing with all of these elements and he's living with end-stage renal disease. I want you to think about how that's why we call this situation a public lynching. It's nothing short of a public lynching. Would you do this to your own kind? Or how can you justify something when you never gave the person help?
Right.
You never intervened as being a public servant.
You really never looked into his situation, his condition.
But it's all documented.
Even though it's documented, you never looked into it to oversee everything that's right in front of you. And then what's so strange is like in a 21-year period, my brother has probably been evaluated about 18 times, 18 to 20 times. And they've all
it could be more than that.
And they've all came back with he has problems.
And now don't get me wrong, there's actually been there's been doctors that said he was competent to stand trial, but then the same people that said he was competent to stand trial went back and did another evaluation and said he's not competent. I want you to get an understanding of it. The understanding of the injustice, like you said, that took hands on February 24th and February 25th of 2022, that this was allowed in the courtroom in this time and in this day and age.
Right.
And y'all give a man that amount of time.
Right.
And I want you to just think logically. As I said, I have all the sound bites. I have all of the documentation. I've been doing Facebook Lives. I've done podcasts with him on SpinCycles. I've done podcasts with Troy Ketchmore and Banky Pounds on Living Life After Life. And this is what it is. But just to show you once again, he's going to do a very good overview of this whole area so you can just get an understanding of how far and how wide this road goes. But
and you'll see no street lights.
There's no street lights. So this is the case that evolved out of Sarah Ruley, and then this is the case that evolved out of Sarah Ruley and then evolved into another traffic stop later on that night, which led into the traffic stop on October 7th with Tabitha Willis.
All right, man, so we out here at the courthouse where the sentencing took place at in Lexington, Virginia. So I'll go ahead and let Shaun speak a little bit about the case and what took place in the building.
All right, so my brother, on February 24th and February 25th of 2022 had a 2-day jury trial in this courtroom right here in Rockbridge. This is the courthouse, which is seated on South Randolph Street on the corner of Randolph and East Nelson Street. This is the courtroom where my brother, this is where the public lynching took place. So the reason I say that because out of all of the jury members and just being in the town, as I said before, there's plenty of black people in this town. There was an all-white jury. Only one black juror was selected that day, to sit on the jury for my brother's trial. And in this courtroom is where, the case went down, as I said before, February 24th, February 25th of 2022. It was a 2-day jury trial. And then this also is the same courtroom where my brother was sentenced, which was on August 9th of 2022. And on August 9th of 2022, that day, the same doctor that gave this court the power to try my brother Anthony Stewart by the name of Dr. Scott Bender, who is a well-known psychiatrist at the University of Virginia, UVA, he came and testified, under oath when he was crossing, because my brother's attorney, Mr. Melvin Hill, subpoenaed him to court. And when he was cross-examined by both the former Commonwealth attorney Mary Lester and my brother's current attorney Melvin Hill, that he wasn't competent. It's all in the literature. He breaks down that he has a mental disease. He names all the elements of the mental disease. He also breaks down even though he could do a lot of things, he's still very, very impaired. This is his words. As I said before, I have all the documentation. There was an article wrote, which was right around the corner from here, by a newspaper called the Rockbridge Advocate. Mr. Doug Harwood, who wrote the article about my brother's case. And right before we close it out, I will show you that paper. Show you just a little bit of that paper so you can get a visual of it. But that paper started this whole movement. Okay. Because if it wasn't for Doug Harwood, I'm not gonna say that it wouldn't have got out, but that paper is very popular in this town. You know what I'm saying?
Local town paper.
A local town paper. So he brought recognition to my brother's case by writing the article. So I want to thank Mr. Doug Harwood. And as I said before, this is the courtroom. 2-day jury trial. The judge that sentenced my brother to 21 years and 6 months was the Honorable Judge Christopher Russell. And then the Commonwealth attorney that resided over the case was former Commonwealth attorney Mary Lester. So just to give you a little bit of it, we don't have to do a long drawn out about the case, but this is where the case was held for 2 days back in February of 2022. This is also where his sentencing hearing was, and this is where the public lynching took place. So this is the lynch post that we're standing right in front of, or on the side of today.
We're out Lexington still, and we're at Washington and Lee campus. And this is another historical place in Lexington, Virginia. So I'll go ahead and let Mr. Stewart tell you a little bit about the history.
So right here where we're standing at, we're on the campus of the University of Washington and Lee, which is a law school, a very prominent law school in the state of Virginia, as well as the country. We're standing, as you will see, pictures of us standing in front of the Lee Chapel. There's some controversy surrounding the chapel right now because of the, the Confederate flag thing and some other issues. You know, I don't really get into the politics of that. But this is the campus. A lot of prominent attorneys throughout the United States, politicians, you know, go or attend this school at some period of their life, and they go out to the world, and they either, you know, practice, you know, politics, or they become lawyers. But this church that's behind you, Robert E. Lee is buried in it. They've turned it to a museum, so it's very historical. I don't know as far as the history of what type of events they hold here. I'm pretty sure they still do a lot with the church because it's situated on the campus and it has a very strong connection to the campus. But I had an aunt that worked here about 25 to 30 years. Her name was Molly Stewart. She worked here for about 30 years before, you know, until she retired. But as I said before, this is a very historical place that's situated in Lexington. You'll get some overshot views once he runs the drone. But just to show you know how closely connected Washley and Ville is, if you look down this way, Ville Military Institute, which is you know right here, you know just feet away, and then you have Washley. So both schools are strongly connected, even though you know one's a military school and one's a law school. But just to give you a you know view and just give you a you know a visual of the area that's Lexington is situated in, we just giving you a you know a little bit of history.
A little bit of history. That's
so,
it.
Know,
break it down a little bit.
So you get an understanding of just where we at.
So
as
definitely
before,
you can look up Washington and Lee and get a little more history on about you know the college and him himself as a man.
Right. So as I said before, we got Ville right here, which had you know at one time George C. Marshall was situated right up here at Ville, and then you had Stonewall Jackson and Robert E. Lee. So you got to think it was three prominent men in this area. I don't know the history of every Confederate or you know just person when it deals with soldiers that was here. I don't know that full history, but you know just to give you, like I said, a visual and an understanding. This is a very historical school. As I said, a lot of politicians and a lot of lawyers have went here, so just to give you an understanding, that's all it is, and that's it about you know Washington Lee and Ville. But Ville is right here, so you'll get an overview when he does the overhead shot. You'll get a very good picture and a visual of Ville and Washington Lee and how connected they are, even though they're two different schools. How closely connected they are.
So if you're ever in Lexington and you want to get a little bit more history and find out, check out the chapel. And,
come to the Lee Chapel, and then there's also a few other, it's more museums. You got the Stonewall Jackson or the Jackson House, which is on Washington Street, I believe. And then you have Ville campus, which also has a couple of historical museums. So when you're in the area, check it out. Yes, I'm sitting here on Randolph Street in historical Lexington, Virginia, which is in Rockbridge County, with a family friend, Miss Betsy Dorothy. I'm gonna let her, you know, take over. She's just gonna give you her feelings about my brother's situation. She knows of his accident and his history, as far as his mental issues, and I'm gonna let her speak. You know.
Hello, I am Betsy Daughtry, and I am proud to say that I have known the Stewart family for years. Their Aunt Hattie was my best friend until she passed away. The injustice that Tony has endured is just completely unfair. The punishment did not fit the crime in any way whatsoever. The first time that Tony told me that he was found incompetent, it was like, okay, this is appropriate. Tony has learning disabilities before he incurred the accident that gave him permanent brain damage. You can only recover so much in so many years from brain damage. I was floored and amazed that he came to me the second time and said they were going to try him again to be incompetent. And it was like, this is not fair at all. We are not receiving justice in this country, with the black community especially. Yes, there may be the same number of black people in the prison, same number of white people or black people into prison, but that represents 25% of the black men in our country. That only represents 5% of the white population. In the 80s, where did the police go? They did not go to the affluent white neighborhoods. They came to the black neighborhoods, and that's what happened in so many towns, including this one, Lexington, Virginia. I would like to see justice served to Tony. He has no business in prison. No one. I am speaking for Tony, but I am speaking for everyone who has learning disabilities, mental disorders, drug situations. They need help, not incarcerated. Thank you very much.
And I just want to thank her for her time. You know, as we said, we've been doing this all day, but I want you to go to the GoFundMe that we have set up for Anthony Stewart. You can check out on my Facebook, which is under Shaun Stewart. My name is spelled ShaunStewart. Also, you know, proceeds from my clothing line, which is Ezekiel's Will, a higher intelligence, will be going and donated towards my brother's fight for us getting justice for him. As I said before, I want to thank everybody that's been involved in my brother's case. And also I want to bring something to real quick just before I close out. You can go to my website for my clothing line, which I will donate a lot of those proceeds to my brother's case. It's EZ Will, just the letter ENZ, Will, WHEEL 420.com. So www.ezwill.com. And what I want to say before we leave this video, I was just speaking with a family member of mine. We was talking about the case, and one thing I want y'all to get to understand before we close out this documentary. The last case dealing with my brother Anthony Stewart, he was pulled over with Christian Hobson, or Chris Hobson. They found him an 8-ball of cocaine. We're gonna make it very to the point. But in the documentary, the reason I'm saying this in the documentary, on the brief, the Commonwealth wrote in their brief that he was caught with an 8-ball of meth. When we brought this to the attention of my brother's attorney, I don't want to speak bad about Mr. John Kohler because I know he's doing what he can, but he basically kind of downplayed it and say, well, he was caught with something. I believe that right there alone is just alarming of how unjust, not just this case is, but just to shine light on just how this case has been beyond not just bizarre, but just unjust. And as I said before, and I'll say it again, just the history, once you look at this documentary, go do the history of Rockbridge County, the city of Lexington, the Confederacy and everything that's been involved, the schools and the history, and you'll see that this county needs, it needs to be put, it needs to be brought to the attention of the world what goes on in this county. And with that, as I said before, for anybody that's interested that might not have Facebook, you can contact me at my email, Shaun Stewart, which is spelled ShaunStewart 1939 And once again, I thank everybody. I want to thank Ms. Daughtry for taking the time out of her day to speak with us. And I want to thank Anthony Newman and Juwan Davis, who came and shot this documentary. When you get the chance, check out their podcast. Check out the SpinCycle podcast, which airs every week. And then also, as I said, you can follow all of us on Instagram. Thank you.